You are listening to the Postcast presented by the Locked On Senators podcast and our friends over at the Glebe Central Pub. Go check out the Glebe Central Pub at 779 Bank Street and tell them Locked On Senators sent you. They are your neighborhood pub in the heart of Glebe. Great people, great food, and great times. I'm joined by Jack Richardson of the Future Sickos podcast. The Ottawa Senators, I don't even want to say they showed up to this game, but they were there. They lose 7-0 to the Colorado Avalanche. And sure, maybe you can try to spin zone this as well. It's the Stanley Cup reigning champions on the road. That's a tough matchup, but this is not the same Colorado Avalanche that they were last season, that's for sure. They just lost a game to the Chicago Blackhawks previously. So you would think the Senators would have a good chance, or at least would not get outplayed to a 7-0 effort. Jack, how we feeling? I feel like every time I'm bringing you on to help me out with the postcast, you got to try to put lipstick on a pig here. I'm sorry, buddy.
Hey, don't worry, that won't be happening tonight because that was just that was so ugly to watch. We're getting past the point this year, it feels like, of them getting outworking teams even though they're losing. That was kind of the identity. I think this week DJ said we need to get back to our identity like 3 or 4 times in one media session. And if like that can't be it because that's ridiculous. Like we're watching them now. I don't know how many losses this year were just been complete blowouts. And that's a ridiculous one too. Like that's a game you should be up for. It's the defending Stanley Cup champs.
Yeah.
First time you've seen them all year. You should be amped up to play that one. And that was just garbage from everyone.
Yep, and the Sens are coming off a win, albeit up against the Arizona Coyotes, but still you want to get some momentum going. And it's not often the Colorado Avalanche are going to have as many injuries as they have. I mean, Andreas Englund drew into this lineup, former Ottawa Senator, and he even got a point and a fight in this one. So that tells you where the Colorado Avalanche are at. We got to thank Sens fans in Van. Thank you for the donation. Positive Pillsy, please. I don't know how I can spin and try to be a positive Pillsy. I'm sorry if you're watching in your van and you're going to hear more negative than positivity, because I've been able to spin positive stories about this team for years. We've done over 700 episodes of one of the worst teams in the NHL. We figured out ways to be positive, but this one, Jack, I don't have many positives here. Like we'll save the little positives we do have for our Sen Central standouts if we can squeeze any sort of positivity out there. But how did you feel this team started this game? Because when they started this game, before the Avalanche scored their first goal, I didn't think that they were, stuck flat-footed or sleepy or anything like that. I thought they started the game with a bit of jump.
Yeah, no, I've watched a lot of Avalanche games actually just
Okay.
this year and last year, just because they're a really fun team to watch. And I thought for them, they came out sluggish, and the Sens were the better team early on, like you mentioned. The shots probably didn't tell that story, but they didn't have that jump going. I think the Avs had a bad power play early on, like just stuff like that that kind of made me feel like the Sens might be in this one a little bit, right? And then once a couple goals went in, even after the first, I don't even want to say like the beginning of the game, because I think after the first, even you could have said, okay, if we come out and have a good second, which they kind of did up until the goals started pouring in against, obviously. I think I was okay with their game. It was just one of those nights where, okay, it won't bounce their way, but they just let it get out of hand, and there's no bite. There was no bite from the team, which bothered me. But yeah, I would agree that they had a good start. They looked like the better team very early on.
Yeah, like I didn't think this team was completely out of hand at the end of the first period, down 2-0. Like, sure, the Sens are down 2-0, but the shots are 12-10. It's not crazy. And when you get two goals back to back like that, they were only 2 minutes and 5 seconds apart. It's going to look ugly, but I didn't think that the Sens should be waving the white flag here. And we'll go through our scoring summary as we do on the postcast for people listening the next day that didn't happen to watch the game. But when you have players like Nathan McKinnon and Rantanen, it doesn't matter who's injured, because McKinnon, he drops the puck off for Rantanen, quick shot, lasers it past the screen Forsberg, and that takes us to 1-0. And then it was pretty much the next interesting play is the Colorado Avalanche. this is where I had a little nervousness thinking Shabbat is going to have one of those tough nights, Jack, because Cogliano breaks up a long Shabbat pass. Timmy can't hold on to it. He loses the puck battle. And then Newhook, like, what a shot there. He blasts that one-timer top shelf, and it's 2-0 Colorado. I don't blame Forsey on either of those goals.
No, the first 2 goals were just screens from the defenseman that he can't really pick up, and you can't expect
Yeah.
him to stop that, and, like, I don't know, I mean, I see people in the chat just lighting up Shabbat a little bit, and he struggled, and that second goal especially, like, you can argue that it took time after the turnover to get for the forwards to get back, which
Yeah.
is fair. And I've talked a lot about it personally, just the forwards not being back checking hard enough at all year. But this one, the forwards can't pass themselves the puck. Like like
Yeah.
their job is to be up, and if they're regrouping in the neutral zone, you're expecting your defenseman to put it on your tape. And
Yep.
Shabbat didn't do that on the second goal, especially, and it ends up in the back of the net and he's the one screening Forsberg afterwards. So there were other mistakes that he made too, and that was just to me, like that's when I tweeted out like something's wrong with him because he doesn't look like himself. Earlier on, he was struggling a little bit, but to me, it looked like it was normal, kind of for what we're used to from him. But right now, he has no confidence, and he's just not the player has been, which is saying a lot, just because the player he wasn't even a top 5 defenseman in the league. He feels like he's taken a step back this year, which is not good for the long term outlook of the team.
Yeah, and you're not alone, Jack. As Samuel, thanks for the donation. Really appreciate it. He writes in, I'm genuinely concerned about Shabbat. Like, what happened to him? He's only 25, and he's getting paid, and he's structured in as a guy that this team needs to rely on, especially like you mentioned, like when he's setting up a breakout pass. He's supposed to be the dude that's able to do that. He's supposed to be the guy that gets things started in transition. And I didn't like that pass, and I thought all over this game, the Sens were trying to force long passes. Like it seemed like that was the only way they thought they could move the puck up ice. Like no one wanted to skate it up the ice. No one was able just to make kind of give and go plays and have that work. It was just like, okay, how can we cover the most ice at the quickest time? Let's try a risky stretch pass here. And the Colorado Avalanche were all over it, it seemed. They were able to break up passes all night. And when the first 2 goals go in, and the like following sequence camera shots both show Shabbat on the ice kind of shaking his head and like looking up at the scoreboard trying to see where things went wrong. That's not a great look from your supposedly number 1 defenseman. So those goals, not great. But again, I'm not saying that the Ottawa Senators are completely out of it at that point. It's a tough way to start. You're on the road, but you're not completely out of it. Where I thought things really started going downhill is that second period when that third goal happens. And this one's not really a kind of beautiful shot like the other 2, but again, it starts from a turnover. Brady turns it over. Arkuri Lekkinen gets a breakaway. He loses it. He bumps into Forsberg and he jams away, and eventually it goes in. I was on the fence whether I thought the Sens should try to challenge for goaltender interference here, because it's a risky time to do it, because if you get the challenge right, that's a big momentum boost for your team. You're stuck at 2-0, you're still in this game, but if you get it wrong, you're down 3-0, and you give one of the hottest power plays in the league with the Colorado Avalanche a chance to cook here. So how did you feel about that play? Did you think that one was worthy of taking a risk with the challenge or not in this position?
I didn't think so, and, there's a lot of faults with the Sens coaching and everything. They're good on the, challenges, and I think the video coach's name is Michael King. I wanna say he doesn't get a lot of credit, but, I mean, their record in challenges is really good, and for good
Yep,
reason. I think
definitely.
that one would have counted, just because I think
Agreed.
Sanderson, I saw him coming back, and, like, he does a great job back checking and forcing Lehkonen to make a play, like, he probably didn't wanna make, but I think Sanderson's force kind of bumped into him a little bit would be enough to kind of overturn it. Also, I think you could argue that Forsberg was moving on his own. There were so many factors, and not necessarily that the minor penalty isn't worth the risk. It's just we saw it on Thursday in Arizona. That challenge in the first period by the Coyotes was terrible, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know if it would have been one of those. It probably would have been close, but I don't think the risk was worth it. And look, if you're a coach and there's a lot of issues with, again, like I said, like the coaching staff and everything. If you're a DJ and you're not happy with your top guys, that's a goal where the captain just turned it over at the blue line after two
Mhm.
bad plays, and he ends up turning it over and it goes in the back of your net. It can be a message to the boys and being like figure it out yourselves. Like, let's wake up. You're not playing well at all. If it was a game where they were in it, out shooting them by a mile, I would have said challenge it for sure. I think when it started to get out of hand, which was around then, I don't hate that they didn't challenge it.
Yeah, I agree. I think what you said really kind of had my attention is Anton Forsberg's momentum was kind of swaying him back into the net already. So I don't think that one would have counted. And if you're not 100% sure on a goaltender interference, don't bother challenging it, because even if you're 100% sure, nobody in this world knows what a correct and consistent goalie interference challenge is these days, unfortunately. Sens fan in Van, thank you again for the donation. Jack, I'll throw this one to you. We'll have a quick discussion. What is the biggest issue with this current roster?
Pick your poison here, I think, right?
That's why I said let's keep it quick. Otherwise, we could do a whole
Yeah,
episode on
yeah.
this.
I mean, I'm just gonna go with I'll go with depth up front.
Okay.
I think the defense has been the big focus all year, but with these injuries to Joseph and Mott, the long term ones, and then obviously Norris, so you're missing three of your top nine guys. They kind of have two fourth lines out there, and I think
Yeah,
when the
agreed.
top guys kind of cool down a little bit, Stutzel carried them a little bit through the new year with his play. DeBrincat and Batherson were really good in December, but I think with the depth gone, it's really shined a light on the lack of depth on the bottom lines of the forwards. Now in the system, they've got options. They've got a really good line in Belleville, and you and Ross talked to Troy Mann. That was a great interview. He gave some
Thanks. Yeah.
awesome insight just about all the little things that they have to consider in the AHL. And I don't hate that they're leaving them down there to get some reps because, man, I don't want to call up Ridley Gregg to a game like this where he's going to get shelled 7-0. What's the
Nope.
point in that?
Yep.
But I would just say lack of depth up front, and that's not really something you can fix. You just have to wait for people to get healthy, which is the frustrating part.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like even an injury riddled team like Colorado, like still the lack of depth that the Ottawa Senators have with these injuries is very telling, especially 5-on-5 when even the top guys who are healthy, that top six, other than Norris being out of there, is pretty much cooking and should be going on all cylinders. They can't get anything done on 5-on-5 or on the power play in this game, unfortunately. Let's head to the fourth goal here as Alex Newhook really impressed me here. That's a great pick for the Colorado Avalanche as he forces himself through the middle of the ice. He does lose it, but then Rantanen gets it, and it's just a quick shot that goes through Forsberg's leg. This is one of the goals where I think Forsey would want to have that one back. That's a tough one, especially now. The 4-0 game, that put the icing on the cake. Like I didn't have a shred of hope once this goal goes in.
4 is like the best lead in hockey, and 3 is the worst lead, eh? Like
Yeah,
you're not coming
yeah.
back from down 4. Yeah, I mean, I am not blaming Forsberg. I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, Francois made a lot of saves for the Avs, but he didn't make any crazy saves. They got nothing. It was all non-high danger chances.
There
It
wasn't
feels like,
much.
other than that
Yeah,
2-on-1 that Brady and Timmy had early in the second. I think
yeah, well, natural stat trick gave the Ottawa Senators 9 high danger chances, but
no way.
I
That's
don't know. Like
generous from natural
I would
stat
like
trick.
to see the
Wow.
clips of all 9 of those, eh?
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, I mean, like maybe in the third, but you're from far away. Like I can only think of that 2-on-1 maybe, and maybe Pinto had a couple chances in tight, but that might, yeah, that's
There wasn't like I
interesting.
can't think of more than 3.
Does it say how many the Avs had?
Yeah, let me go back to it. 14.
Yeah, it's not gonna cut it. It's not gonna cut it, folks. So technically, I guess Forsberg had he saved at least 7 high danger chances, which is like you can't ask for much more
Yeah,
than
and
that,
that's the
right?
thing. I'm not going to fully blame Forsberg in this because the first 3 goals, I don't think he had much of a chance on. But I just think it was tough. A couple of those goals. But what did you think? And we'll head to the next goal after this. What did you think about DJ Smith's decision to leave Forsey in that game? Just have him eat all 7 of those goals. Did you think at the fourth goal he was going to make the switch?
Uh, I'm a bit surprised he got the start. I don't know how they're
Okay.
deeming who's starting. Uh,
Yeah, it is.
like, are
It
they
is kind of tough to figure out. Yeah.
like that can be a whole other thing that we study. Like, if you're trying to run a tandem, you can't just go with whoever won last. Like that's not going to work, right? You need to get some kind of consistency where you get a guy who, where they're ready. Okay, I'm playing in 2 days. I'm playing it, and maybe they do know that if you win, you're in. But that's frustrating because like Talbot hasn't been terrible. But at the same time, I don't understand or I don't hate the decision to leave him in because you throw Talbot in, then they're out of whack again. And you went through
Yeah.
this whole thing against Seattle last week.
And we've seen that so many times, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
not many times has the replacement guy come in and been decent. Maybe one or two times, but
No.
I think it was the right decision. Like you can't. I don't want to say it's a cop out to change the goalies, but sometimes like those guys are men, they're professionals. Sometimes you got to leave them in there and they got to eat it. You got to
Yeah.
eat that tough loss and you got to let that sit with you. So I thought it was the right call to keep them in.
Well, and why like, there's so much about the goaltending that just doesn't add up for me. Like if you take him out and maybe the team is playing well, that like against Seattle, you know what I mean? Like in that scenario, Forsberg should have made some saves and the team had more jump. But if since they didn't have jump tonight, if you're DJ, you can't look to pull him because it's a wake up call. Like you've done that too much, like you said. So
Yeah.
I don't hate that he left him in because when it was 4-0, they're not coming back, like we said. So
Yeah.
and they hadn't shown anything to say that they were going to come back.
Yeah, they were done at that point. This one was a tough one to sit on the couch and watch, but if you're looking to watch the game with friends, you could have head to our friends over at the Glebe Central Pub. It's in the heart of the Glebe. Anytime there's an Ottawa Senators game on, you know they're going to have it on the screens at the Glebe Central Pub. It's your neighborhood pub. They've got great drinks, beers, cocktails. They've got good food. I love the waffle fried nachos. That seems like an awesome choice to just pick away at while you're watching the game. And if you're nursing a hangover and want to recover after a bad 7-0 loss, they got brunch too. So maybe you hit a Sunday brunch to try to recover from that one. But anyways, go check them out at 779 Bank Street and let them know that the Locked On Senators sent you. It's our friends over at the Glebe Central Pub. So the second period ends 4-0 Colorado. And at this point, no hope once again, but the Colorado Avalanche just start clowning the Ottawa Senators at this point. Like this must have been awesome to be an Avs fan at this game because it's 4-0, and then McKinnon pulls off amazing no-look spin pass at the blue line, and he hits Lehkonen in stride all alone on the tape, and then Lehkonen doesn't even try a move or anything. He knows he's just surprised everyone so well. He just does a quick backhand, and it beats Forsberg 5-hole to make it 5-0. What do you think of that play, Jack? Like at that point, I'm just like, this team can do anything they want to out on the ice. Like McKinnon's just making it look good. Lehkonen doesn't even have to try to pull a move. He's all alone.
Well, that was a goal where I kind of threw my arms up and I'm like what else? What else could go wrong here? Because that was again Shabbat on the penalty kill because Zub had gone down
Yeah.
and didn't return for the third. So I don't know what's up with that, but Shabbat was on the penalty kill, which he doesn't usually do. And I don't know if he was confused about the systems they run, but he kind of went over the board to Rodriguez, even though he was the last defenseman back, and it would have been a 2-on-1 if Rodriguez got the puck. He starts floating to Rodriguez, no look pass from McKinnon, and I like the move from Lehkonen. It was a nice play because you're alone in front. You're expecting, I know, as a goalie, you're probably expecting the guy to take a little bit of time and set up.
Yeah.
But the quick shot 5-hole on the back end, I love 5-hole goals. Those are always really satisfying to watch.
Yeah, I love him too, but as a goalie, those are tough ones to give up. But I agree with you. I think if he tries a move, Forsey just goes for an aggressive poke check and might get him because he's coming into the net in stride so fast. So that was the right play by Lehkonen, and it seems like the Colorado Avalanche were doing right plays left, right, and center. And here's where Sens abroad. Andreas Englund, former second-round pick of the Sens, he goes D to D with Hunt for a nice pass, the one-timer. This was another one I thought Forsey wants back. It's a one-timer from Brad Hunt. I didn't see too much screens in front. I don't think it got deflected. That makes it 6-0.
Yeah, and at this point, it's uncle. You gotta just say mercy if you're the Sens, and they wanted that clock to run as much as they could. I can't even. I'm not even gonna lie. I can't really remember that sixth one. I think I remember 1, 2, 3, 5, and 7 against. Which
I
is
don't blame you
strange.
for
Yeah,
knocking that one out of your memory there, Jack,
yeah.
because It doesn't get any better, as this one really pissed me off because
Oh,
it's a D zone draw. The Sens win the draw. Sanderson can't control it behind the net. The puck bobbles out in front, and again, it's Alex Newhook. What an incredible shot. He snipes that top shelf off the back bar and out in an instant so quickly. I'm pretty sure the refs called no goal on the ice. Like, they
yeah,
didn't
they
even
did.
see it go in and out like that. And I knew it was a goal right away. And you know it's a goal when the player celebrates, usually. The players know they've got an eye for that, and Newhook's not going to let a goal he scores go unnoticed, even if it makes it a 7-0 goal. Just another great play from Newfoundland's own Alex Newhook.
When's the last time you saw a review with under 2 minutes to go in a 6-0 game for the team that just scored to make it 7-0? Like, and I felt like it took too long too. It's just like, man, just
Put
let's
us out
go.
of our misery
Like,
here.
let's move on. Like, it was the most ridiculous review I've seen, I feel like. And obviously it matters, and I'm not dispelling that you need to get the goal and whatever. There's a lot on the line, especially now with betting and everything. It's important, but I I I I was just like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, this is like, this is the most insulting loss I think the Sens have had in a long, long time.
It's up there. It's bad.
Yeah.
Like, at least run the clock while you're doing the
Right?
review, eh, Jack?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
like do us that favor at least,
Yeah.
so you're killing time off this game. But yeah, that one makes it 7-0. And now, what's meant to be a fun part of the postcast and a spot where we can spotlight some great players and talk about how good guys are improving and this team's really gelling. We're not going to get that tonight, but we will try to give a Sens Central standout here. Jack, as the guest on the show, I will graciously hand it over to you first. Do you have anyone to give some positive feedback to?
I do, I do. I really liked Jake Sanderson's game tonight. You mentioned the turnover just on that 7th goal, but, like, who cares? It's 7-0 at that point.
Yeah, and
Uh,
it's not like it wasn't really cleanly on his stick. It was kind of
no, it was a
tough
tough
for him to
play,
get. So
and
yeah,
it kinda I'll touch on it later, but I think they got outcoached ridiculously tonight. Just, like, Colorado read every single play the Sens had. So I think that was part of it. So anyway, I really like Sanderson tonight. I think in the 3rd, especially when they're down 4-5-0, he's jumping up in the rush. I think he had, like, a couple breaks, like, not breakaways, but he was in tight there. He had his legs going, and look, we've mentioned Thomas Chabot struggling. It's been met with, it could be wrong. Maybe Chabot isn't struggling and he's just playing the same and just hasn't really elevated his game. But Jake Sanderson being on the scene, it's just we're watching someone do what we need Chabot to do every night. So I tweeted out in the middle of the second the ice time disparity. Sanderson was leading. I think Chabot took the lead. I haven't really taken a look at it since, and I'm sure it ended up pretty even just because they weren't really in the game. But I really like Sanderson and the way he played tonight in a game that no one else, I don't think, played a really good game top or start to finish. Sorry.
yeah. So if you're curious about the ice times here, Jack, Thomas Chabot 23-13, Jake Sanderson 23-42. So he did end up playing
Woo!
more in the long run, 30 seconds more. But
Wow.
I agree with you. When Thomas Chabot's not playing well, someone's got to step up. These aren't the Senators of the past couple of years where Thomas Chabot is literally the only guy. And if he's out, like Thomas Chabot, a couple of years for the last 3 years, he could be the worst defenseman on the team. This team could be getting destroyed. He's still playing 27 minutes a night because you have no other options. And with Sanderson coming into the fold, at least he can kind of help supplant some of those tough minutes if Chabot's not feeling it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and it's not even it's what he's doing defensively. His battling defensively is really fun to watch, and it's easy to cheer for, obviously. And then offensively, it'll come. Like, I think if you
Yep.
studied kind of Sanderson's development, his first year at the program, he was not a very good offensive player, and then he kind of took off in the second half of the year. Then the Sens draft him. North Dakota, his first season, plays well, but not necessarily an offensive stud. The second year, although he didn't play very much just with COVID and injury, he was, I think, over a point per game as a defenseman in the NCAA, which is ridiculous to think about. And then this year, he had a bit of a stretch, I think, when Chabot went out with an injury. He was really good offensively, and then he kind of cooled off. But he's been steady Eddie, I think, and I'm in a really bad game. I think this was arguably probably one of his best, to be honest, like that I can remember, like just start to finish for Sanderson.
Yeah, and I mean, he's not an offensive juggernaut, Jack, but with 16 points in 41 games, you're on pace for 32 points as a rookie defenseman. I'll
Not
take
bad.
that.
In second slot of ice time, right? He's not getting handed like you look at like Moritz Seider last year in Detroit. He was the number one guy. There's no one else ahead of him, so
Yeah.
you can't really compare him offensively to a guy like that. But yeah, I agree. I think that's a solid production for Jake Sanderson.
Yeah, not bad. All right, for my Central standout, this is just like looking at a couple nice stats. I didn't think he was really a game changer or anything, but in a 7-0 loss, you got to try to grab for something here. I'll go with veteran 35-year-old Claude Giroux. I mean, he had 5 shots. He was a -1. You noted before we started, Jack. Every single Ottawa Senator was a minus in plus minus. So a -1, I guess, isn't terrible. That's that's where we're at this point. But you guys know in the postcast, I like to shout out guys that have good nights in the faceoff dot. Claude Giroux, 80%, 12 for 15 in the dot. So that's where you want at least a veteran to be winning these faceoffs, so you have a chance with the puck, so you can have possession and try to get something going. So as a stretch, as a reach of a pick, I'll go with Claude Giroux here.
I like this game. What do you think of the new top six? It's been a few games now, or 2 games, I guess, with that kind of configurement. What do you think of the new look lines?
I mean, it's interesting, and when you have such good players like this in your top six, I'm not gonna get the pitchforks and torches out for line changes because I think any combination could work potentially. There's so many different skill sets that these guys have that could work well together, but I was at a point where I know it was either the Brady, Timmy, and Giroux line was clicking, or the Batherson, Pinto, and DeBrincat line was clicking. Like, it was very rare that both those lines were clicking. And I think people were saying when one line was working, the other one wasn't. Okay, you got to get that other line going, mix it up, and then vice versa. I'm almost of the mind just go back to how it was, because one of those lines was clicking at some point of time there. So I wouldn't mind going back to having it Brady, Timmy, Giroux as the top line there.
Yeah, me too. And I was going to mention just the Pinto, Batherson, Giroux line was good tonight. I think they were the
Yeah,
best
they were
line,
decent. Yeah,
mostly. Like, obviously, the bar's on the floor for this kind of game, but I think Giroux just kind of makes every line he's on better. So having that option of, I don't know if I like to Brinkett and Kachuk together yet. I haven't really had enough
yeah,
time, and the Arizona's tough. One more game in St. Louis, which Kachuk should be fired up for. It's his hometown,
big
right?
time.
So we'll see how they do there, because I thought Kachuk and DeBrincat, actually both of them, I thought they had some heavy legs tonight. And it's hard to analyze in a game like this. I think it was always we talk about that in the earlier years of the rebuild when they were getting shelled like this and they had no one. It's kind of hard to evaluate your talent, right? I think any minor hockey coach or anything will tell you when you're at a game for a tryout season, it's impossible to analyze your team in a 7-0 game either way. Like, if you
Yeah,
win 7-0 or you lose, you can't identify who's good and bad because it's 7-0. So I don't know if it's fair to kind of pinpoint even Shabbat, be like, look, you're bad, it's the whole body of work. So I'd give the new lines like 2 or 3 more games, just to see what they can do, because they need some even strength offense. It's getting ridiculous at this point. Like, a couple
30th in
last
the league in even strength goals, Jack. 30th.
what's funny, Colorado was 31st coming into tonight, and I don't think that's the case anymore. They had 60 even
Not
strength goals tonight. Oh, it's just I don't know what you do. Like, other than, I mean, obviously a coach is the easy quick fix, whatever. But I don't think that's gonna happen anytime soon with ownership pending. So we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know what this team can do until they start getting guys healthy. I'm not gonna call for too drastic of moves here, because I think they just need to wallow in this downtime here.
Yeah.
Another donation from Sens fans in Van. Thank you very much. I'm just realizing probably Sens fans in van doesn't mean they're living in a van down the river. I think that's what I was getting at earlier. I think van is short for Vancouver, so that's a tough one on me. That's a bit of a Ross moment with Mr. Ben Dover from past, if you guys remember that one.
Hey, they could be in a van though, like a
That's true, and
double
that's a
meaning.
trendy thing to do in Vancouver. Have a
Yeah,
souped up
yeah.
van because rent prices are just through the roof here. So maybe it's a double entendre here, but nonetheless, we appreciate the donations. And Jack, we'll end with this one because this is a good discussion here with the bottom six being so kind of replacement level. And you mentioned it. It's like this team has two fourth lines here. Does Locked On Senators and Jack Richardson want Sharkalov called up here? What is your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, why not? I don't know when the AHL All-Star game is, but
February 5th in Laval.
yeah, you get tons of time. I think the Avs had a guy who's, I think Hunt is the AHL nomination for them for the
Oh, okay.
All-Star game.
Yeah.
I think the broadcast mentioned that. So why not? Like, just give him a look. And I know Troy Mann discussed a lot, and like I like when he answers stuff about, Thompson and JBD. He's not quick. He's not a fan, which is in a, like, he's the coach. He's like, yeah, they're good. They just need to work on this. I love that about him. So I can see why it's advantageous to keep him down there. And it was interesting when he noted that when Chartier and Lucchini were called up, they had to have a discussion with him, just be like, look, like, you haven't been good enough. And I think after that, the product speaks for itself. He's had a great run. I would be worried a little bit about just kind of stranding Greg and Lodin, because that line seems to have found a lot of good chemistry
So good.
recently.
Yeah.
So, it would probably have to be a mass call up. I'd want all three up. I don't know about you, but I have liked Sokolov's game recently, obviously, and I think a full year down there could do him some good.
Yeah, definitely. I hate to do this, but I'm going Pillsy preaches patience on this one because, like Troy Mann said, the points are there, sure, and Igor's game has really bumped up since the Chartier and Lucchini call-ups. I think that kind of lit a fire up under his ass, but I just think he's best served playing top six time in Belleville, getting top power play, because unless you're going to put Igor with skilled line mates in a third line role where he's going to have a chance to click offensively, I don't think he's going to succeed. And if you're going to bring him up, you need to set him up for success. You need to put him in a position where he can thrive. And no offense, but being put on a line with Gambrell and Watson, that's not going to cut it for a guy like Igor. And I don't think it's going to do him any well. So I would rather have him stay down there because, look, if the Ottawa Senators were so close to a wild card spot, then you know what? Maybe you're just like, screw development. I'm putting the guys who we think are the best players here. We got a chance to stay in this race. Like if they're 3 points out or something, we need guys that can score goals. Hell yeah, call them up, get that going. But unfortunately, they're not in that position. I believe the Philadelphia Flyers have now passed the Ottawa Senators in the standings, which, yeah, that's a tough one, Jack. So I don't think there's a rush to call them up here. But you know what? Also, if they do call him up, I'm not going to be upset either because Igor, this is a guy that puts the work in. He listens to the coaching staff. He's a great teammate to have. He already has 8 NHL games under his belt, so it's not like this would be a whole new experience for him. So if they decide to call him up, cool. But in my personal opinion, I think he's better suited to stay in Belleville and keep dominating.
I think that's a good point because you're putting him on the third line right now, which what would be Lucchini and Gambrell. Those bottom two lines, they were getting praised so much this week from DJ, and I don't hate that. Like, stick up for your guys, right? They aren't
Yeah,
the
that's
fan
fine. Yeah.
favorites. Like, I don't get bent out of shape about it. He's gonna do what he's gonna do, and he's kind of. I think when Watson had a media session too and said like, we're playing our game, dump and chase hockey, that got a reaction too, and I don't think that they're a group, that bottom 9 anyway, which is essentially the rotating guys, the rotating cast from the fourth line. I don't think they're suited for the, possession game. I think
Yeah.
I think they're instructed to dump it in and chase it because they're good at forechecking. And B, I just think that, if the coach is telling you to do that, obviously you're going to do it. So, and then I'm going back to your interview with Troy Mann. He said they like to have their players carry the puck in. Okay, well, you throw Sokolov with Gambrell and Lucchini, they're not going to be carrying the puck in every time. And Sokolov's not a dump and chase kind of player. So you have to put him in a position to succeed. I agree, and I think until you can have a third line, because he's not going to be in the top six in Ottawa
No.
as long as DeBrincat's here. You need to have a third line that's structured around the possession game, like the top two ones are. And I don't even know if Mott and Joseph is that. Maybe Joseph. I'm not really sure. But I think that's a good point. Just kind of preach the patience. Pillsy preaching the patience.
Yeah, I'm trying, but it's tough to be patient in these days. Like I think, just to kind of wrap a bow on that, I think if you had an opportunity where Mott and Joseph are healthy, and you get a third line of Igor, Pinto, and Joseph, that can work. That's a place where Igor Sokolov can succeed. He's got guys like Joseph that can skate a little faster, bring the puck up. He's got guys that have ability to score when they have the puck on their stick in Pinto, because Sokolov's not just a sniper now. He's racking up the assists and setting up guys like Ridley Gregg, like Victor Lodin. And then you get Mott on the fourth line there. I think that's an ideal situation and that can work, but that's not where this team is at, unfortunately, with injuries. So let him stay in Belleville, let him go to the All-Star game, and then maybe at trade deadline, if you think there's a stretch where you can get him in a good spot to succeed, then maybe bring him up. But also, I kind of want Igor down there too, because Belleville has 2 playoff games in franchise history. I
Yeah.
would like this team to get some success and those guys, this franchise, to experience what it's like to play in the playoffs, to get a little motivation to stay hungry. So it's not the worst thing if, because Belleville's in a playoff position or at least close to it right now. So I wouldn't mind seeing that team have some success.
I agree, and I'm thinking next year, right, when Sokolov might be making a push, and Ridley Gregg,
Yep,
the same thing. They're probably going to be battling for a spot on that third line when you think about it, right? You're
definitely.
going to have
Yep.
Pinto, Mott probably won't be back. He's on a 1 year deal, so you got Joseph in that slot with his contract, right? So that's probably in the advantage. I would say would go to Sokolov because he's older and he's actually a winger.
Yep.
So I don't know what's gonna unfold. I'd like to see them up. I'm not gonna hate it if they call them up, obviously because this is brutal. It can't get worse than what we just watched.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, and we'll have to see what happens in the Ottawa Senators' next game. Like you mentioned, Jack, that's going to be in St. Louis, Brady Tkachuk's old stomping grounds. And there's a lot of hockey kind of community. A lot of NHL guys stay in St. Louis, so there's a big hockey buzz there. And the Blues are a team that they've got a great roster, but they've been struggling this year as well. So the Sens weren't able to kind of kick a Colorado Avalanche team while they were down. Hopefully, they can do that with the St. Louis Blues here. Jack, thanks so much for joining me in our second game postcast where the Sens were shut out. I can't thank you enough for still showing up. But you guys know the Locked On Senators podcast. We always got a postcast, whether the Sens lose, win, whatever happens, we're going to put on a show for you guys so we can all get together, and misery loves company. So thank you so much to the people that showed up. The chat was electric. Can't thank you guys enough for the donations. So for myself, for Jack Richardson, this has been another version of the Locked On Senators postcast presented by the Glebe Central Pub. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you with a new episode of the Locked On Senators podcast on Monday.